Everyone, before I get started on the video, I just wanted to say I'm still working on my game. I just wanted to do more than upload once every 1 or 2 months, and I thought it'd be fun to analyze some of my favorite horror games, and we'll make some scary. Now onto the video. To me, Dead Space is one of, if not the best, horror game of all time. From the setting, to the atmosphere of the Ishimura, to the enemy design, to the unique ways you can fight the former crew members of the ship through dismemberment, Dead Space has some of the best atmospheric intensity of any horror game I've ever played. The creaks and groans of the ship, the sounds of the necromorphs crawling through the vents, and the grunts and growls they emanate as they rush towards you, intent on ripping you to pieces, and the design of the ship itself lends very well to the horror of Dead Space.
Not a great start to our repair missions.
Pulse rifles?
Standard procedure, Miss Daniels. We'll register them in the flight lounge.
Hello? Where is everybody? Half the ship must have heard that landing.
Be proud, Chen. You got us here in one piece.
Johnson might disagree.
Sounds like it's so fucking good. I'm actually panicking here. In this video, I'll be talking about the remake exclusively. I may do a comparison video comparing and contrasting the remake and the original, but for now, the focus will be on the remake exclusively. There won't really be any spoilers, but I highly suggest you play the game first, simply because it's really good and you should experience it as blind as possible. The game starts off with you playing the main character Isaac Clarke aboard the Kellion, along with Hammond, Kendra, and the two meat shields in the original who have names in the remake. They are Chen and Haley. You're on your way to the Ishimura on an engineering mission to fix the ship, and you as Isaac are looking for your girlfriend Nicole, who is a nurse on board the ship. You arrive to find the ship is oddly quiet with no one greeting you. The game doesn't take long to get started, as after you look at the ship damage reports, a quarantine is placed and the necromorphs attack both your son and the crewmate. Chen is quickly killed, and Hammond and Kendra escape as you dash your way through the hallways to an elevator nearby and escape your assailants. In this room, you find the best weapon in the game, the plasma cutter, and I'm only half kidding with this one. The versatility and damage output that this weapon can have through the game is absolutely insane. As this is an analysis video on why I find the game scary, from this point onward I will only really mention story events if they are relevant, and of course, there are scenes of suicide, and overall Dead Space is a very squeamish game, so if any of that bothers you, then here's your heads up. The first thing I would like to touch on is the sound design, and this game sounds absolutely fantastic.
Repair systems online. Loading system reinitialized. Warning. Autoloader malfunction. Please contact a repair technician.
Sound is a very important factor for horror games to be successful. They contribute to the overall atmosphere of the game and can help instill a sense of uneasiness, dread, or even terror depending on the situation and the sounds that you're hearing. I will talk about this more in depth in another video, but take for example the stomping of the alien in Alien Isolation. You hear those footsteps and you know that you're facing a creature that is faster, stronger, and better than you in every way, and that the best way to survive is to hide or use whatever tools you can to survive. Or hearing necromorphs crashing through the vents and hearing them roaring in the distance while you're in a dark room trying to figure out where they're coming from. Each necromorph has their own little sounds that they make depending on the enemy type that you're facing. The first ones you encounter just roar at you, the ones with the exploding sacs have a high-pitched screech, and the brute and final boss have very bestial roars. The guns in the remake also sound great. They really give you a good sense that you're using tools to cut apart enemies. Speaking of which, I want to touch on the dismemberment system real quick. When Dead Space first released in 2008, the idea of dismembering enemies to kill them was a new idea that had never been done before, or since with any other series as far as I know. This leads to you needing to use the tools at your disposal to cut apart enemies in different ways. And they're literally just tools. The game drives home the point that you're an engineer trying to survive. The only real guns you get is the pulse rifle and maybe the line gun. The plasma cutter, ripper, contact beam, and force gun are all just tools that are used for different things in the world of Dead Space. They're just industrial tools. Fighting the regular necromorphs and the baby ones are straightforward. For the adults, you simply want to aim for the arms and legs and go to work. For the babies, you want to wait for them to extend their tentacles and cut those apart. The brutes, you need to use stasis and get behind them to cut them up. The pregnant necromorphs, you have to avoid shooting in the stomach, etc. There's so many different types of enemies, and I'm not going to cover them all, but my point has been made that you have to approach each situation differently. The dismemberment system is incredibly fun to play around with, and with a multitude of tools at your disposal, you have multiple ways of cutting up these monsters. Each enemy type forces you to adopt different tactics, as I mentioned before, and the tools you're given allows you to have flexibility on how you approach encounters. Or you could also, just run away. One tool that they added that wasn't in the game until Dead Space 2 is the Kinesis module. This allows you to take blades from the enemies or pick up environmental objects and throw them back at the enemies to help save you ammo, and it's also just a ton of fun to take random objects and just throw them at the necromorphs even if they don't do any damage. Another thing that adds to the creepiness of the situation is seeing the mental effects on both yourself and the surviving crew. The few survivors you come across are mentally not there and either die after you come across them by different means, or they kill themselves because of the mental state they are in from the effects of the marker. Kendra discusses seeing her dead brother, and a character you meet later in the game talks to his dead wife as if she was there with him. The effects that the marker has on people drives them mad and is the cause of the necromorph outbreak. It's never really explained, but the marker somehow has the ability to change genetic code, which is how the crew members changed into the monsters that they are. In the game, you will find audio and text logs detailing what the crew went through both on the Ishimura and on the colony of Aegis 7, which is the planet that the Ishimura is mining from.
Security request retrieved.
It didn't die. We shot that fucker right between the eyes and it didn't die. Smith had to shoot its fucking arms and legs off. For God's sake, send help!
The effects range from hallucinations to committing acts of violence and even committing murder. In conclusion, the game does horror so well because it doesn't rely on spooky jump scares that happen out of nowhere. The atmosphere puts you in a state of constant unease with the sound of the ship, necromorphs crawling all over the place and ambushing you, seeing the carnage that took place on the ship with blood and dead bodies everywhere. And while I didn't touch on it, the music really drives home the dread. I can say without a doubt in my mind that Dead Space is one of the greatest horror games of all time and is one of my personal favorite games of all time. Too many games don't use atmosphere to their advantage, or they rely on shock factors and constant jump scares to scare the player rather than letting the game do it organically. While there's nothing inherently wrong with those kinds of games, I just think that game devs, especially indie ones like myself, can really kneecap themselves by relying on jump scares, and we should all take note of how Dead Space does horror instead. If you enjoyed the video, then you should like and subscribe. I physically cringe every time I say that, but calls to action helps, so I gotta do what I gotta do. But for real, I'll be making several more of these videos on this topic, and I'm also working on a horror game myself and uploading devlogs on my progress on it. If any of that is entertaining to you, then I hope you stick around to see what I have coming next. Thank you for watching.